The late afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the living room. Sarah sat in her favorite chair, her hands trembling slightly as she waited for Emma to arrive. Her daughter had called that morning, her voice quiet but determined. "I need to talk to you about something important," Emma had said. Sarah knew what was coming. She had always known that one day this conversation would happen. She just hadn't expected it to happen today. For 25 years, Sarah had kept a secret that had started as an act of protection but had grown into a betrayal so deep that she could no longer justify it. Emma, her beloved daughter, had no idea who her real father was. And today Sarah would have to tell her the truth. The knock at the door startled her out of her thoughts. Sarah stood, smoothing her hands down the front of her dress, and walked slowly to open it. Emma stood on the other side, her eyes searching her mother's face for answers before she even stepped inside. "Hey, Mom," Emma said softly, stepping into the house and setting her bag down on the floor. She didn't waste any time with small talk. "We need to talk." Sarah nodded, her heart racing. "I know." They sat down in the living room, the silence between them thick with tension. Sarah could feel the weight of the years pressing down on her, the guilt that had been festering in her heart for so long now demanding to be confronted. Emma took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've been thinking about Dad," she began. "Or, I guess I should say, the man I've always thought was my dad." Sarah winced at the words. This was it. There was no turning back now. "I've always had this feeling," Emma continued, her voice steady but filled with a quiet sadness. "This feeling that there was something you weren't telling me. And recently I started looking into things. I talked to some of your old friends and I found out about someone named David. I need to know, Mom. Is he my real father?" The question hung in the air between them, and for a long moment, Sarah couldn't bring herself to speak. The truth had been buried for so long, hidden beneath layers of fear, guilt, and shame. She had convinced herself that she was doing the right thing by keeping it from Emma, that she was protecting her from a complicated and painful truth. But now, as she looked into her daughter's eyes, Sarah realized that she had only been protecting herself. Finally, Sarah let out a long, shaky breath. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "David is your real father." Emma's eyes widened, a mix of shock and pain flashing across her face. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "All these years I've thought someone else was my dad. You let me believe that." Sarah swallowed hard, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought I was protecting you," she said quietly. "Your father, the man who raised you, he loved you so much. And David, he wasn't ready for a child. He wasn't stable. I didn't want you to grow up with that kind of uncertainty. I wanted to give you a normal, happy childhood." Emma shook her head, her hands clenched into fists. "But it wasn't normal, Mom. It was built on a lie. You've been lying to me my whole life." "I know," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I thought I was doing what was best for you, but I see now that I was wrong. I was afraid that if you knew the truth it would change everything. I didn't want to lose you." Emma stood up, pacing the room as she tried to process the revelation. "So, what happened with David? Why didn't you tell him about me?" Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek, the memories of those early days flooding back. "David and I were together for a short time, but our relationship was complicated. He was in and out of my life, always chasing something, his career, his dreams, his freedom. When I found out I was pregnant, he had already left town. I tried to reach him, but he wasn't interested in settling down. So I made the decision to raise you on my own. And then, your father, the man who raised you, came into my life. He loved you from the moment he met you. I thought it would be easier, simpler, if I let him be your father." Emma's voice was tight with emotion. "And what about David? Does he even know I exist?" Sarah shook her head, her heart aching. "No. I never told him." Emma stopped pacing, staring at her mother with a look of disbelief. "You never told him? He doesn't even know that I'm his daughter?" "No," Sarah whispered, the guilt crushing her. "I was afraid, Emma. I was afraid of what would happen if he came back into our lives. I didn't want you to grow up with someone who couldn't be there for you. So I made the decision to keep it from him. And from you." Emma sank into the chair, burying her face in her hands. The silence between them was deafening, and Sarah could feel the weight of her betrayal pressing down on her like a leaden blanket. "Why didn't you trust me?" Emma asked, her voice muffled by her hands. Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth? Sarah's heart broke at the question. I didn't trust myself, she said softly. I was scared, Emma. I made the wrong choice. And I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know how much I regret not telling you sooner. Emma looked up, her eyes red with tears. What do I do now, Mom? What am I supposed to do with this? I don't know, Sarah admitted, her own tears spilling over. But whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you want to find David, I'll help you. If you never want to speak to me again, I'll understand. I just want you to know that I love you. No matter what happens, that will never change. Emma sat in silence for a long time, her mind racing with the weight of everything she had just learned. The truth after all these years was almost too much to bear. But as the shock began to settle, she realized that she still had the choice to decide what came next. I need time, Emma said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I need time to figure all of this out. Sarah nodded, wiping her tears away. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready. As Emma stood to leave, the air between them felt heavy with uncertainty. There were no easy answers, no quick fixes for the years of betrayal and secrets that had defined their relationship. But as Emma walked out the door, Sarah knew that the only way forward was through the truth. She had finally told her daughter the secret that had weighed on her for so long. And now, as the consequences of that truth began to unfold, all she could do was hope that one day, they could rebuild what had been broken. The truth was out, and with it the chance for both of them to finally heal. But the path ahead would be long, and Sarah knew that redemption, if it came at all, would come with a heavy cost. And for now she would have to live with that.